Welcome back to the Holistic Homes Podcast. I'm Christine, licensed general contractor here in California and construction consultant nationwide. Today's episode is an important one and one that I want to bring to your attention because not enough people are talking about it, and I feel like you might be getting duped. And it has to do with what's being sold as a custom home. And I want to share with you two projects recently that have come up where the homeowners have reached out to me to consult on their project. And one of our requirements is that it's a complete gut renovation inside and out, or a complete custom new build where we have full control, like from the beginning to the end, on dialing the home in. These two projects didn't quite fit the build for either of those, but the homeowner fully believed that they were signed on to get a custom home. So first I want to address the idea of spec building. And I have seen spec builders, which is short for speculative, meaning that these builders are building a home that they are going to sell. They are going to put it on the market. They are going to sell it to an end buyer, but they don't have that buyer yet. So they have gone through the plans, they've gone through the design, they've done the interior selections, they probably even have renderings and like beautiful images of what the home's gonna look like. They are going through the permitting process and they're gonna start building this home, and somebody, we don't know who, is going to buy that home. That's not quite a custom home. You may fall in love with the floor plan and think this like checks all of my boxes. I love this home. This is what I want to buy. And spec homes are usually sold like during construction or at the tail end of construction. The problem with spec homes is that they were typically designed, and the construction drawings, everything designed with the intent to sell for a profit. Everyone's in business to make a profit, but the problem is that that home was not prioritizing likely what your healthy home needs or what your ideal checklist is when it comes to water intrusion, beefing up insulation, getting a watertight attic or maybe an unvented attic, putting in leak management systems on the interior. That home was designed to appeal to a mass of people, mass of buyers that are going to want to buy that home. And so be cautious if you are proceeding with a spec home. The exterior enclosures that I'm seeing on spec homes, for the most part, are the bare minimum requirements. I'm seeing things like Tyvek house wrap. I'm seeing 2 layers of building paper underneath stucco. I'm seeing unvented attic assemblies that are using spray foam. You need to be aware of that if that's something that's on your do not want list. But I'm seeing most of the enclosures pretty lackluster when it comes to being robust and watertight. And so if you are planning to go the route of a spec home, earlier is better, and understanding if there is any upgrades separate than the interior, if there are any upgrades that can be made to the building enclosure itself. Maybe even the windows, depending on what's being selected. But just know what you are getting if you're planning to get a spec home. So that's one category that I see this kind of gray area of, is it a spec home or is it a custom home? Because if you get in the process early enough, you are told that you can select finishes and tile and lighting. You can select all of that stuff, but that may not be your biggest area of concern if you're wanting to build a watertight, healthy home. So get clear on what you get, what you don't get, and what is happening on the exterior of the home. That's your first line of defense to get it watertight. And so understand what you are getting when purchasing a spec home. The other category that I am seeing is developers. Developers that develop moderately sized communities, but they also have a custom home division. This is another gray area because often the developer owns the land And so the land, if you want that piece of land, you are going to need to hire that developer or that builder to build the home. Like it or not, that piece of land is tied to that builder. That is a little bit risky in that if things are not going well with the builder, you don't have much recourse because that land is owned by the builder. Different than when you see like these master plan communities developed by like big name national builders. Those are usually not custom at all. They're more production homes. But what we're seeing is smaller sized developers that are purchasing pieces of land and then leading to it being a custom home, but it's not quite custom. And you are tied to that builder, like it or not. That can be a little bit of a risk in that you don't know, one, possibly the craftsmanship of the home if you haven't worked with that developer before, but also going back to the enclosure again, you don't know if they have familiarity around doing more robust watertight enclosures. And so let me give you 2 examples where this has come up. So we recently had a client in the later part of last year that came to us and was somewhat in the early stages of their project. They hadn't started construction yet. They had said that they found a piece of land and they are working with a builder. They've already gone through like floor plan and elevation and made some like floor plan modifications, and we were gonna get started on their project. And we had the discussion with the builder pretty early on about the enclosure and what was gonna be used for the enclosure, because this particular homeowner had a very high priority of getting things watertight. And what we had discovered was that the current proposed plans that were already gone through structural, it was going to be 2 layers of building paper and then stucco for about 90% of the home. And when asked about, are there alternative options? What could we do to upgrade the systems here? There was a lot of pushback that they were pretty adamant about only using the 2 layers of building paper. They weren't interested in moving to like a zip system with a rain screen, or even upgrading to like what's sometimes referred to as a crinkle wrap or like a drainage wrap. There was just a lot of resistancy to beef anything up. And the comment was that, my favorite, of, I've been a developer for 35 years and I've never had an issue on any of my projects. And so that was that. They were not willing to upgrade the exterior, even that the homeowner had wanted to explore that path, and that's what they were going to get. They could not get a different builder. They already were purchasing this piece of land that was tied to that builder, and they were stuck on how they were going to do the enclosure. And it was the end of that conversation. So the homeowner wasn't going to get what they were expecting. And there was other conversations that happened that led to some other concerning areas around flat decks over living space. There was some roof penetrations that were pretty susceptible to water intrusion. And I like to emphasize the fact that just because a builder doesn't have any issues or known issues for X amount of years, that should not be the response to a client that is asking for different building strategies that are above and beyond building code and what the builder does as their tried and true method. The homeowner is the client, and the homeowner is the one paying the bill. And if they are expecting a more robust home and they want to use better building strategies, the builder's response to that should be a willing participant to collaborate and explore what that could look like. Not just, we've done it this way, that's the way it's going to be. Sure, if the builder has no former knowledge or never experienced something like a zip system before, that's understandable that they don't have the comfort level to install something like that, but they should still be exploring other options. So I have seen the topic around the building enclosure come up quite a bit on spec homes, even when they are being sold as custom homes, because the spec builder is referring to it as a custom home when it comes to finishes, but meanwhile, the homeowner is thinking this is a custom home when it comes to the exterior enclosure and the finishes. So a little bit of clarity needed there on the front end. So that's one example that came up recently. There was a project in a different region that was also a spec build. And this particular project was purchased during construction, very, very early in construction. This was like after the foundation had been poured. It was like perfect timing to make some sort of meaningful improvements. We could not do much on the enclosure, but the enclosure was already pretty good. We made a few modifications just to get some drainage behind the exterior cladding material, but the water resistant barrier was pretty solid. And this particular client had children that were very sick, and a home that was mold safe was like just completely not negotiable. That was a must-have for this family. And it was discussed with the developer and they were aware of it. And we were brought into the project to begin discussing the pre-construction meeting that I refer to it as, pre-construction meeting related to the framing. That is a big, big topic. The framing is not an easy area to remediate. So we need to have sometimes multiple conversations around what's acceptable when it comes to moldy lumber, what's going to need to be rejected, what might need some remediation. And so we had 2 conversations around the framing package. And so everyone understood what the homeowner's expectations were, but what happened was quite different. And the home got framed with a lot of questionable lumber. We ultimately had a mold inspector come through the project as we were trying to communicate again, like no more framing with moldy lumber. But the home ended up getting completely framed really quickly. And the mold inspection came through and had determined that about 80 to 90% of the lumber had some level of visible mold growth on it. And response from the builder, again, was quite lackluster in that it couldn't be avoided. They rejected material, but ultimately this was the best that they could do. And the problem from there was that the homeowner didn't have recourse because their contract has some language in it that didn't make them liable for, any moldy lumber or anything like that. And so it was on the homeowner to handle the remediation, because although the builder agreed to a lot of the homeowner's request and understood the assignment about no moldy lumber, ultimately what they put in did not meet that benchmark. And the homeowner thought that what they were getting was something completely different. That was very early on in the framing stage of this project that, again, was supposed to be a custom home, but it was actually a spec home, and the builder just was not a team player at that point with the homeowner's request. So in some instances, it's completely understandable that there's going to be upgrades or additional charges, or there's going to be change orders. There's going to be some modifications to what was a spec build if you're going to plan to convert it to a custom build. That's understandable. But what I'm seeing is different than that. What I'm seeing is the spec builder and their crew, their subcontractors, do not have familiarity with the custom home building space. They are fast, quick. They understand, got to get this project finished and sold. And they're not usually familiar with taking homeowner request, implementing it, maybe slowing down for additional inspections. And so that's what I've seen on some recent projects when it is a spec home. And I've done a whole other podcast breaking down production builders, spec builders, developers, semi-custom homes. I have a whole separate podcast breaking all of those down. So go check that out. But if you are expecting a custom home and you are finding that maybe the only thing that's available are spec homes, do your research and have some really heavy conversations, and make sure that you're reading through that contract language to know what you get, what you don't get, and everything that's included, because I'm seeing a lot of gray area and developers wanting to really cater more to the custom home building community, but aren't quite providing the custom experience. And it can just lead to some contentious conversations, can feel really frustrating. And if you're wanting to prioritize a healthy home, you have to make sure that that builder is on the same page as you, and you have to make sure that your documents and your contract and everything that is in place align with all of the conversations that you've had. So I want to help any of you avoid those conversations. They're difficult. And I also want you to have more clarity on what you are getting. If you are planning to purchase a custom home, going the spec builder route or using a developer, have the conversation around true custom homes and also their willingness to have consultants on the team and third-party inspections, all of the quality control that I've talked a lot about, so that you can protect yourself and avoid some of these uncomfortable conversations. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. As always, we have links down below if you want to reach out to us on Instagram. And then if you are in the market for a high quality builder or an architect, we will also include the directory link that we have down below as well. It's a national directory. You can search for architects, contractors, home inspectors. Go check it out, see if there's anyone in your area. But it's my gift to you so that you can start your searching off on a great start. So thank you for being here, and I will see you on the next episode.